Welcome to Crossroads. In today's episode, I'm going to be talking about the Senate border bill, brief update on that, and also the plan to give not only a pathway to citizenship for all the illegal aliens, but also free money. And who does not like free money? Apparently a lot of people, millions of them, like free money. Let me show you this first, though. The Senate had a bipartisan bill. Senates and Republicans have come to an agreement on the border bill. And you might have seen some of the different headlines on it. Some of them said that you have to pass it to find out what's in it. We did not know what was in it. There was no time to read what was in it and the time granted to pass it. And now that the bill has gone to the House of Representatives, the House of Representatives is raising some alarms because they're saying this Senate bill, backed by Joe Biden and Alejandro Mayorkas, offers a pathway to citizenship and therefore voting rights to all the illegal aliens, including as they cross the border. What it would do is this. It would give Alejandro Mayorkas, of course at the Department of Homeland Security, the ability to grant amnesty to people illegally crossing into the United States. And this would give them, of course, every person they want to bring over, the rights of citizens, including, yes, the rights to vote in our elections. And they wanted to have 5,000 illegal immigrants every single day, which would add up to 1.5 million by the end of the year. And that does not include people, notably, from countries other than Mexico. Meaning if they ship them in, if they bus them in, if they fly them in, if they get a big shipping container ship and just offload them, they could bring as many as they want in through other means. Now, the bill is backfiring somewhat because, well, people are finally becoming aware of what the heck they're doing. They're becoming aware that this is not just some organic crisis. They're becoming aware that this is not just people deciding to pack up their bags and head to the United States. What's now becoming clear is this. Our own government, the federal government, is orchestrating and financing this flooding of the United States with people from other countries. They're doing this through the United Nations, and they're using taxpayer dollars both through the UN and to different NGOs, nonprofit organizations, and so on, which are helping our own government facilitate this. They're bringing them into every part of the country, offering them benefits, free money, everything else, getting them addicted to those free handouts, and saying if you want to keep those handouts, remember who gave them to you. Remember the party that gave you these handouts, because when you get voting rights, once we move the pin a bit more, because that is the goal, as we're now seeing, once they get voting rights, they have a choice. Vote for the party giving you the handouts, or vote for the party that's saying they're going to send you right back. Now, Senate Republicans helped negotiate this bill. They're now saying they're going to reject it. We'll see what happens. But House Republicans in the House of Representatives, they're saying they're going to reject it. In fact, House Speaker Johnson is saying this bill is dead on arrival. They're not going to let it pass. Now, it's all being negotiated still. A lot of this is still up in the air. I'm planning on I'll give you an update on this later in the week once things are kind of cleared up a bit. But this is kind of where it's at right now. And that being said, right, we've been talking about the free handouts. Guess which city is joining Chicago right now on giving the free cash handouts? Well, it's New York City. The city's saying that we're bankrupt. The city's saying there's no more money. The city's saying it can no longer afford to house and feed the illegal immigrants. The same city that's saying every single service to American citizens being provided by the government, every single service is on the table to be cut. That includes cutting police, that includes cutting sanitation, that includes cutting the education budget for children, that includes cutting every budget they have, everything. And they're gonna, while cutting everything, begin giving a monthly cash or cash card handout to all the illegal aliens. And of course, they're following the steps of Chicago doing this, another bankrupt city. You might remember last week, we discussed how Chicago was giving a $9,000 voucher to the illegal immigrants, which they can use to then rent an apartment for 6 months and also go buy furniture for their brand new apartment. And we also showed new budget documents from the United Nations showing that they've been giving prepaid cash cards and even just envelopes filled with cash, dollars, to the illegal aliens as they're, of course, traveling towards the United States. And we also showed how a lot of that money is actually coming from, guess who? You, the American taxpayer. They're using your tax dollars, including the money given through the UN, from your money to the illegals. And while apparently the campaign of giving free money to all these illegal aliens is a growing trend across the United States even after they get here. Let me show you what New York City just did. It says here, New York Post, Mayor Eric Adams' administration will soon start handing out prepaid credit cards to migrant families being put up in the Big Apple hotels. It says the Post has learned this. It says the $53 million pilot program, meaning this is just the beginning. It's a pilot program and they're going to expand it if it works, run by the New Jersey company Mobility Capital Finance, will provide asylum seekers arriving at the Roosevelt Hotel with city cash to help them buy food, they're saying, according to city reports. Now, it said it'll start with a group of 500 migrant families in short-term hotel stays and will replace the current food service being offered there, according to City Hall. In other words, they're already giving them free food, but they're giving them now prepaid credit cards to go out in the city and buy all the food they want. These prepaid credit cards they want to be giving to the illegal aliens, they can only be used at bodegas, grocery stores, supermarkets, and convenience stores, suggesting, of course, that they can't send the money home in remittances. They can't just mail it to their human traffickers because, of course, a lot of them are in debt to the human traffickers unless they find a roundabout way for that. And the migrants, they're saying, must sign an affidavit swearing they will only spend the funds on food and baby supplies or they'll be kicked out of the program. And we assume they're going to have some kind of oversight to make sure they hold their word to it. It says the immediate response card initiative appears akin to the state's food stamp program dubbed SNAP, which provides lower-income New Yorkers with a credit card to cover the cost of meals and will provide funds based on the same scale. It says the amount on each card will vary depending on the size of the family and whether any income is coming in, according to details in the contract, meaning they might get more money. It says a family of 4, for instance, could be provided nearly $1,000 each month, which comes out to $35 a day for food, and cards will be refilled every single 28 days. Now look, it turns out though that this may have been happening for a while. It turns out this is actually not new, and it turns out they were trying to hide it from us. Remember how we were told that Americans were going to get bailouts? Do you remember how during the COVID-19 lockdowns and everything like that, our, of course, public representatives were saying the American people are suffering from the lockdowns. Americans are being fired from their jobs. Americans need a bailout. Do you remember that? Do you remember how people were making this big fuss on camera and they were saying that, of course, Donald Trump was president at the time. They were saying Donald Trump doesn't care about the American families suffering under COVID because he's refusing to allow this bill to go through. He's refusing to allow the American people to have the money they need to buy groceries and survive. Well, you might remember what happened with that. They passed of course, multi-trillion-dollar bills over the course of time, and it turned out they were giving the money to things unrelated to Americans. They gave us, here's your $600 check, buddy. And of course, they made that up by increasing our rents and prices of everything else. Here's your $600 check. And meanwhile, they took some of that money and they were, investing, for example, in gender studies in Pakistan and building camel statues in the Middle East. I'm not joking, they actually did that. And of course, some of that money, it turns out, some of that money was really just a big bait and switch, because guess what? Hundreds of millions of that money was actually being used to give free money to illegal immigrants. helping finance the raid of the United States. Red State has it. It says Washington State used hundreds of millions. This is just Washington State, by the way, folks. Hundreds of millions of federal COVID relief funds to provide giveaways to the state's illegal immigrant population. This is according to a new report that came out. It says in April of 2021, the state legislature approved $340 million in funding as part of the Immigrant Relief Fund that, according to its annual report, was designed to provide targeted community engagement, communications development efforts, and trusted messengers to encourage eligible community members to apply. That sounds like some legalese there, right? But it says, however, what has only just emerged was the money for that program came from the federally approved American Rescue Plan, ARPA, which provided $350 billion for local governments to support their response to and recovery from COVID-19 public health emergency. And of course, it turns out that helping save us from the public health emergency required them to give our tax dollars to illegal aliens. Here's the Economic Policy Innovation Center about this. They say, this is according to the report that found this, they say Epoch has discovered that the Biden administration approved $340 million in SLFRF money for cash payments to undocumented immigrants in Washington State, in other words, illegal aliens. It says Americans' COVID relief money was used to send $1,000 checks to immigrants unlawfully residing in the state of Washington. It says, according to Treasury's own data, the Washington COVID-19 Immigration Relief Fund provides a one-time cash grant of up to, they say, $1,000 for each resident of Washington who are at least 18 years of age and are ineligible to receive federal economic impact payments or unemployment insurance benefits due to their immigration status. In other words, they're here illegally, and instead of going home, we're giving them free money. And of course, you might remember, while the illegal aliens were getting $1,000, what'd you get, $600? It says that the $340 million project is categorized as a cash transfer expenditure under the SLFRF. That's how they defined it, a cash transfer, approved by the state of Washington. And this means the Biden administration directly subsidized undocumented immigrants under the guise of COVID-19 pandemic relief. The Washington COVID-19 Immigration Relief Fund has stopped taking applications, indicating that the project fund is fully exhausted. Meaning, they said, hey, free money, everybody took it, and it's done. They took all that money. And of course, there's something big coming out now. Former President Donald Trump recently spoke with Fox News, and he said that he believes the Chinese Communist Party is actually directing these operations. He said the Chinese Communist Party is directing military-aged men from countries all around the world to come and illegally enter the United States. He claimed in some ways as well that these might be people emptying prisons, emptying mental hospitals, and sending criminals, mentally ill people, and maybe even soldiers, possibly, military-aged men, to come and illegally enter the United States, taking advantage of the relatively open borders policy we have here. And he said as well that he believes the open borders program is going to lead to new terrorist attacks in the United States. Watch.
I believe we're going to have a terrorist attack 100%. 100%. During my term, I had no terrorist attacks. You know that, right?
So there'll be saboteurs? What are they?
I had all sorts of bans on people from certain countries. I had bans all over the place. We had no attack.
10 seconds.
Now, look, as all this happens, an AP article from January of 2021 is coming back into the headlines. People are looking back in time because they're wondering, was this the plan all along? What are they really doing? Why are they doing this? You could say, well, it's because they care about the welfare of individuals. They want to make sure that people are being treated fairly, and if people are here illegally, we can't just let them starve to death, right? Fair enough. But it turns out there's something else to all of this, and that something else is now being dug up because guess who talked about it openly? Well, Joe Biden himself. It claims that the Biden administration, when he was first coming in, when Biden was first saying he's going to have his initial policies, Biden stated that he was intending to give citizenship to all the illegal aliens flooding into the United States. And this claim is being noted as part of the open borders agenda to let in millions of people, millions upon millions of them, maybe tens of millions, and then make them dependent on the government. They need the government handouts to survive, and then grant them citizenship and voting rights. And were they to do that, this would very likely, because they would probably vote for the people, giving them free food and free housing and free cash cards, it would create a one-party dictatorship in the United States. This would be the end of the American Republic as we know it. This would mean that we no longer have two parties. The Republican Party would be obsolete, and you would then have maybe the Democrat Party and maybe the Socialist Party, and that's it. This is the AP article on this from 2021. It says this: President-elect Joe Biden, because he had just got elected, right? That his decision to immediately ask Congress to offer legal status to an estimated 11 million people in the country has surprised advocates given how the issue has long divided Democrats and Republicans, even within their own parties. 11 million people, folks. That's not including all the ones who entered while he was president. It says that Biden will announce legislation his first day in office to provide a path to citizenship for millions of immigrants in the United States illegally, according to 4 people briefed on his plans. It says the president-elect campaigned on a path of citizenship to the roughly 11 million people in the United States illegally, but it was unclear how quickly he would move while wrestling with the coronavirus pandemic, the economy, and other priorities. It says for advocates, memories were fresh of President candidate Barack Obama pledging an immigration bill his first year in office, and it said in 2019, but not tackling the issue until his second term. And here's a quote: "This really does represent a historic shift from Trump's anti-immigrant agenda that recognizes that all of the undocumented immigrants that are currently in the United States should be placed on a path to citizenship." This was according to the executive director of the National Immigration Law Center, who was briefed on the bill. And it says that if it was successful, the legislation would be the biggest move toward granting status to people in the country illegally since President, guess who, Ronald Reagan, bestowed amnesty to nearly 3 million people in 1986. And when Reagan did that, by the way, California was a solid red state. California is a Republican state. When Ronald Reagan gave citizenship to 3 million illegal aliens, California went from solid red to solid blue. It is now forever blue. It is a full-on Democrat state. And that demographic shift, if Biden did this, would be across the entire United States. It says that legislative efforts to overhaul the immigration policy failed in 2007 and 2013. That was when Obama was, first end of Bush era, then Obama era. It says that Ron Klain, Biden's incoming chief of staff, said Saturday that Biden will send an immigration bill to Congress on his first day in office. It says he did not elaborate on Biden's office, declined to comment on the specifics. Now, what we're seeing now is that Biden did not do that, but the immigration bill that is now going through Congress does do that. That immigration bill right now being negotiated in Congress achieves what Biden said he would do. It would offer a pathway to citizenship to every single illegal immigrant in this country. And in addition to that, of course, even give, again, Alejandro Mayorkas, head of the DHS, the ability to, as people illegally enter the United States, have a rapid process where they grant them amnesty, and with that, voting rights. Now, Elon Musk has sparked a public debate on this. And Elon Musk posted a screenshot of the headline on X of the article we just looked at from 2021, and he wrote this: Biden's strategy is very simple. 1, get as many illegals into the country as possible. 2, legalize them to create a permanent majority, a one-party state. That is why they are encouraging so much illegal immigration. Simple yet effective. And keep in mind, Elon Musk is an immigrant, but of course a legal immigrant. Now, to nail down this point, Elon Musk also linked to the congressional bill that failed to pass previously, showing that not only are they doing it right now, but they tried this before. When Biden said that he was going to give, amnesty or citizenship to every single illegal alien, that was not just empty talk. They actually tried to do it. They tried to do that, and of course it failed to pass the Senate. That bill was H.R. 1177. And let me show you the bill. It says this. It says, quote, "A bill to provide an earned path to citizenship to address the root cause of migration and responsibly manage the southern border and to reform the immigrant visa system and for other purposes," right? Earned path to citizenship. I think that means that they earned the right to citizenship by coming here and illegally entering the country. And Elon Musk is also pointing out some of the issues with the free handouts that the illegal immigrants are getting. And he said this as well. A few other things you probably don't know. Illegals in America get bank loans, mortgages, insurance, driver's licenses, free health care in New York and California at least, and in-state college tuition. They get free college. And he says, what's the point of being a citizen if an illegal gets all the benefits but doesn't pay taxes or do jury duty? And I should remind you, Americans don't get some of these things. American citizens don't get free health care. American citizens don't get free college. And of course, that's not technically free either. It is paid for by your tax dollars. It's paid for by your premiums, and the free housing and free subsidies for that are paid for in rent hikes. If you're wondering, Elon Musk says it right here, quote, "If you're wondering why housing is so expensive, this is a major contributor." Supply and demand, folks. Supply and demand. If there's 10 houses and 20 people want them, what happens? There's 10 houses, 5 houses are given away for free by the government, and the American people compete for the remaining 5. What happens? The cost of those houses will skyrocket to the very limit of what those remaining people can pay. Of course, it's not that drastic, but just illustrating it. They subsidize free housing for one group of people using your money. And then we have to compete over the remaining housing as the federal government restricts permits, notably for example, single-family homes and so on. And while companies like BlackRock and others are buying up single-family homes. That's why rent is so expensive. And in other news as well, we've discovered before, we've talked about this, some of the reports showing that the Chinese mafia is carrying out drug operations right here on American soil, as well as the cartels, by the way. And this includes gang members using slave labor, there's slaves in America right now, to grow things like marijuana out of homes in American suburbs. And it turns out this program is being enabled in part by the U.S. Department of Treasury. A new report explaining this. It's a criminal operation being sponsored in part, folks, by your hard-earned tax dollars. Just another one. The Maine Wire says this. From Oklahoma to Maine, a little-known program operated by the U.S. Department of Treasury has been leveraged by foreign criminal organizations to acquire properties throughout rural America and transform them into drug manufacturing and trafficking hubs, human trafficking hubs. Of course, using the money, that given by our federal government and by our tax money, in order to buy up properties, also putting a squeeze on housing prices, and then using them to make drugs and traffic people. It says the so-called Community Development Financial Institutions Program, that's CDFI, originally created by Congress back in 1994, may have started as a way to help low-income immigrants access financing to purchase homes. However, since 2019, thanks in part to COVID-19 era funding enhancements, the program has become a way for foreign criminal organizations to obtain taxpayer-funded benefits as they scoop up American land and American houses for elaborate international drug operations. And I should note as well, if you're wondering why these Chinese citizens are buying up American land, if you're wondering why they're buying up all this, of course, housing in America, and keep in mind in Canada, this is openly being cited as the reason for their high housing costs. It's because foreign nationals are buying up the properties, and as they lock Canadian citizens out of the market and create a monopoly, the Canadian citizens can no longer afford the houses. The same thing is happening in America through multiple different angles, and this is one of them. It says, according to a leaked Department of Homeland Security memo, there are more than 800 Chinese-owned properties throughout the U.S. This is not just the properties, but instead, quote, where Asian transnational criminal organizations are engaged in illegal drug manufacturing and trafficking. In other words, DHS is aware of 800 Chinese-owned properties in the U.S. run by the triads, Chinese criminal organizations, that are carrying out drug manufacturing and human trafficking. And it says DHS believes the proceeds of the marijuana trafficking are used to finance other illicit activities, including human trafficking, narcotics trafficking, and other activities in the People's Republic of China under the Chinese Communist Party. Let me show you some more on these grow operations, by the way. We talked about them a lot on the show, but let me show you this. The Daily Caller said that lucrative Chinese illegal marijuana grow operations are popping up all over Maine, just one state in the U.S., according to a federal memorandum distributed within the Border Patrol that was obtained exclusively by the Daily Caller News Foundation. It says law enforcement in Maine identified 270 suspected properties used for Chinese illegal marijuana grow operations that could produce an estimated $4.37 billion in revenue, the July memo states. It says Chinese nationals who either have resident status in the U.S. or asylum claims that prevent them from being removed from the country tend to operate such grows. A federal law enforcement source who requested anonymity because they weren't authorized to speak publicly told DCNF. And they said this, quote, "We think the Chinese are taking advantage of rural areas like Maine to produce marijuana to sell across state lines and funnel the profits back to China," the federal law enforcement source says. It notes the memo included a heat map showing the large areas of Maine that are occupied by Chinese illegal marijuana grows, generating profits that are then sent to China. Voters chose to legalize marijuana in Maine back in 2016. While medical marijuana use has been legal since 1999 and was decriminalized in 1976, the sale of recreational marijuana became legal in 2020. And they said, quote, "There's no deterrence." This is according to the former head of DEA Special Operations Division, Derek Maltz, telling DCNF. He said, quote, "Criminals are masters of taking advantage of vulnerabilities." I've talked to a lot of people on this. What is happening with areas that have legalized marijuana is that the Mexican cartels and Chinese criminal organizations are coming to the United States to carry out their operations. There's no longer a punishment, for the most part, for running these operations other than a fine. And the only crime they can get them on is if they're stealing electricity or stealing water. In other words, it's easier. They don't have to traffic them across the border. They don't have to go through security checkpoints. And even for police, if they capture these people running these drug operations, there's almost no ability of the police to do much to these people. And even when they're having slave labor, even when they're running human trafficking operations because of the open borders policy and the other policies protecting this type of illegal activity, there's very little they can do about that also. Now, a lot of what we talked about today all stems from the open border policy, but who is really facilitating the influx of illegal immigrants and thus the border crisis? Well, the United Nations, working hand in glove with the federal government under the Biden administration. You might remember, this is coming out now, people are becoming aware of it, but I covered this in a special report several years ago called Border Deception. I went to Texas, I went to the border, I even went to Mexico where I saw the illegal immigrants crossing, throwing their papers, throwing their passports away, getting rid of their IDs, getting rid of anything of value, and then coming across to the US and applying for asylum. And of course, trying to enter America legally through other means. You can watch my special feature on that, which explains what is behind this. It's called Border Deception. It's only on Epoch TV. Link to that in the description below and in the live chat. It's a must watch, especially now because, look, I was talking about this before it was really well known. I got attacked pretty heavy for saying it, but everything we say in this special feature, everything is now coming out. Everything we talk about is now being proven to be true. And now before we jump into questions, here's a quick word from our sponsor.
Experts agree. One of the best ways to protect against financial uncertainty is to diversify your portfolio. Learn how physical gold and silver can secure your retirement funds from today's economic challenges. With a gold IRA from American Hartford Gold, you can safeguard your wealth with no penalties or taxes when you transfer your current qualifying retirement accounts. Call now and our precious metals specialists will send you a free information kit, no cost or obligation. American Hartford Gold, a trusted industry leader with an A+ from the Better Business Bureau, has a 5-star rating from thousands of happy clients. Whether you are getting physical precious metals in a gold IRA or delivered to your doorstep, we offer only the highest quality gold and silver. For your peace of mind, we also offer a no-fee buyback commitment, a low-price guarantee, along with free shipping and free insurance. So don't wait. Call the number on your screen today and secure your financial future.
All right, welcome back. Let's jump into some questions. Real quick, I'm on the road right now. You might notice that the internet is not so great, and I'm in a hotel, an undisclosed location. If you're wondering why my setup is not like it normally is, I'm going to be doing more on-the-ground investigations again. Currently, I'm in California, and I'm investigating the Chinese virus lab they found out here. I'll give you a quick teaser on that, folks. You're not going to believe what I'm finding. I'm blown away. I never thought I'd see this in my life. I was at the secret Chinese laboratory yesterday, the one they found here. This is public news. Remember, they busted it. You might remember, do you remember the news reports? The news reports went like this. Ebola found its secret Chinese lab operating in California. Federal government money given to secret Chinese lab operating in California. You might remember the headlines. And of course that died down because they said there wasn't Ebola there. This was technically a company that got federal government money to manufacture, testing devices for COVID. And the whole thing got swept under the rug. Do you know what really happened? The CDC never even tested the vials. They had hundreds of, just fridges and everything of these vials of diseases. Ebola, there was a paper that said Ebola. They had all kinds of, infectious diseases. Some of them were written in Chinese, some of them had no labels at all. And because they weren't properly labeled, the CDC refused to test them. They never even knew what they had in that laboratory. The CDC refused to help them dispose of it. The CDC did not do anything to help with this. The FDA didn't do anything. The FBI didn't move on it because, if you have Ebola, it's considered a weapon of mass destruction. They didn't even test it. They don't even know it was here. And of course that screwed over the local officials because it all fell on them, and then they took blame for it. There was even international calls saying that they should step down because they weren't doing anything. The federal government didn't do anything. And guess what? It turns out there are no laws in the United States to stop this from happening. China, the Chinese military, could build a lab in the United States and have all these diseases here and do virus experiments, anything they want, and there are zero, well, not anything, but a lot. There are no laws to stop it. It doesn't exist. I'm going to be showing you what I'm finding here in a special feature upcoming. It is absolutely shocking. What I'm finding here is absolutely shocking. So stay tuned for that. Also, I'm going to be heading to Panama to investigate further the illegal immigrant crisis, and especially I want to be looking into why they're doing it. I want to uncover, not just, I don't want to go to the border and get videos of people illegally crossing sites. I want to go and find out, why are they doing this? Why is the federal government funding it? Why is the United Nations operating it? Why are they doing this? Because I think we've been jerked around so much. I'm sick of it, and I think you are too, and I want to go find out exactly what the heck is going on. So I'm going to be doing that as a follow-up investigation as well, so stay tuned for that, folks. Kit Keller, you're saying, let's go to questions. Kit Keller, you're saying, Josh, please remember to use the word illegal before the word migrants. I do, unless I'm reading an article directly, because I don't want to alter the content of an article. So you might notice I'll always say illegals, illegal immigrants, or illegal aliens to emphasize what it is. But if I'm reading you a quote from another media, I will read it as they write it. Or if I'm reading a comment, I'll read it as they write it. Otherwise, I don't want to put words in their mouth, but in my own words, of course, I'll use it properly. Let's see here. Post Orban, you're saying, infuriating theft and embezzlement of citizens' wealth for Marxist redistribution. Our government is doing everything it can to start a revolution. And yeah, I think that's absolutely accurate. I would say this is theft and embezzlement. It's the federal government taking our money, saying it's for one thing and using it for something else. And you know, they've been really disingenuous with this entire process. They're acting like they're doing something secretive or illegal, frankly. You know, case in point, how is it that we're only now realizing that they were taking our bailout funds and giving them to illegal aliens? How is it that we weren't told this initially? I think if Congress had been told this, and if the American people had been told that that was the plan when they were negotiating the bailouts for Americans during COVID, I don't think it would have gotten passed. If it had been negotiated beforehand that Biden was going to be giving our tax dollars to NGOs and working with the United Nations, I don't think he would ever have gotten the money for this. In fact, he's using our border security money in some ways for it, but it's also coming from State Department, it's coming from DHS, it's coming from multiple government agencies. And why have they not said this publicly? They still haven't come out and told us this. DHS, Alejandro Mayorkas, he's been denying, rejecting subpoenas and requests for documents by Congress, which, in my opinion, they should hold him in contempt, and they're not. The Democrats were holding Republicans in contempt. Why are they not holding, Democrats in contempt? Why are they not going after the other side? He should be held in contempt for refusing to tell the American people this. Now they're trying to impeach Mayorkas, but of course, that will give them access, of course, Congress access to these documents. And so we should be getting more answers on it. But you know what, folks, this is where the fourth estate comes in, the old scrappy journalists. And so, case in point of why we do what we do here, When the government refuses to tell us, it's the job of journalists like myself to go and find out, which is, of course, what I'm trying to do for y'all. Real quick, on the point of illegal aliens and illegal immigrants and migrants, there's a lot of technicalities with this, if you want to dig into the weeds of it. First of all, one of the operations of the Biden administration has been to remove the word alien from the discussion. They no longer call these people aliens. An alien is an unidentified foreign person, in this case, right? An illegal alien is an unidentified foreign person who is also here under a legal status. Of course, illegals has been the word we use for a lot of them in short, because the idea is this: if you enter this country illegal, your very presence here is an act of violating American law. Your presence is illegal, therefore you are an illegal individual, right? That's the nature of it. The argument from the left has been a person cannot be illegal. A human being is not illegal. Well, sure, a person's not illegal, but if you're entering a country illegally and you staying there is a violation of the law, yes, your presence is an act of violating our law, and therefore you are illegal, right? You are the crime. You know what I mean? And of course, the other narrative is, well, these are illegal immigrants. They're not illegal aliens. And that's also technically true. The issue we have now is that you have two types of people crossing. There's people fleeing, going in the dead of night, drug trafficking or whatever else, and they're entering, tearing down fences and coming into the country illegally. Those are illegal aliens still. The illegal immigrants are the ones applying for amnesty, and they're on the wait list. Because the DHS, the Biden administration running these operations, and also through the United Nations International Organization for Migration and Refugee Resettlement, what they're doing is they're educating the illegal aliens on how to take advantage of our amnesty system. And so people applying for legitimate amnesty, people fleeing countries where they could be killed or tortured or religiously persecuted, those people are getting pushed back on the waiting list. And people coming here for free housing and free money, or they just want the government to take care of them, they're gumming up the system because our own government, working hand in glove with the United Nations, is teaching them how to do this. And they're taking advantage of this legal loophole to, I'd say, not only destroy our immigration system, but to flood the U.S. in a way that, of course, if their plan works out, they will give them citizenship and voting rights or amnesty, which will create a one-party dictatorship and also a permanent welfare state. They will transform the United States into a socialist country using that method. The other side of it is legitimate immigrants, legitimate people fleeing torture or murder of their own regimes, like people fleeing China. A lot of those people are unable to get legitimate amnesty when they're the ones who actually need it, because these people trying to get free handouts are cutting the line. That's how it's working. And so that's the technicality of it. A lot of news outlets now are just removing the illegal part and just saying migrants, which is the same trick they used in Europe. Because technically, you could argue that the federal government has legalized the process of violating American law. And so because the federal government has legalized it essentially, or decriminalized it, that they're not illegal anymore because the federal government is allowing it. So there's a lot of technicalities like this. I typically will say illegal immigrant as the stand-in for this, but there are different categories of them, which makes it, of course, a little complicated. But yeah, I agree. We should keep saying illegal immigrant because these are not people who are here to stay. And Trump is saying that day one he's going to boot them all out. But keep in mind, Biden said day one he's going to give them all citizenship. So take it for what you will. Let's see here. Ellen McCauley, you're saying, why should we pay taxes? I've said several times that that's going to become a debate in this country. We have what has been called in the past the social contract. It is the agreement that the governed, us, have with the government, the elected officials who represent us. These are not leaders, they're not kings, they are elected representatives. We as the American people select them to represent our interests in the halls of Congress and in the executive branch through of course, the federal government. We choose them with the purpose of having them represent our interests and to serve some purpose that benefits us. The purpose of government is supposed to be mutually beneficial. And of course, in the past, if you go back to prior to the French Revolution and guys like Rousseau, for example, I don't think was a good guy, by the way, but he did make a good point about the nature of the social contract. And the Founding Fathers and of course the Declaration of Independence emphasized this, that people elect government, and government exists through the consent of the governed. And that if government oversteps its boundaries, if government becomes tyrannical, read, for example, The Law by Frederick Bastiat, a fantastic book, very short, The Law by Frederick Bastiat, that if the government engages in the acts of tyranny that government is designed to prevent, then the social contract is broken. And if government stops representing the interests of the taxpayers or of the governed, the people who through their consent, through the consent of the governed, give power to government, then government loses its legitimacy. I was saying for a long time that because of the abuses we're seeing and the globalism and the idea that government no longer represents the governed of a certain nation. It represents the governed of Latin America, or the governed of Africa, or the governed of some other random country. Of course, as wealthy nations, we might want to help them a little bit, right? But when government begins abusing the people of its own country for the sake of helping people of others, and even allows the other countries to abuse the people that it's supposed to be taking care of, then the social contract is broken. And once it's broken, you're going to have a real crisis. You're going to have people wondering, exactly like you said, why pay taxes? Why allow people to get benefits that I don't get? What's the purpose? And even in communities that are on government subsidies, people on welfare and stuff like that, you have a lot of them very unhappy about this because they're watching the illegal aliens get benefits that even they can't get. There's more benefits being given to non-citizens than to U.S. citizens. And I think this needs to be remedied by our government because it can't go on like this. People are going to look back to that Declaration of Independence and see that line that states that, basically when the government no longer represents the interests of the governed, when it violates all these different standards of why, through which government gains its legitimacy, then according to the Declaration of Independence, at least, the people have not only a right, but even a duty to overthrow it and replace it with something that does serve their interests. And I think you're going to have a lot of people maybe calling for that soon if this doesn't get remedied. At the same time, too, I don't think we're there yet. I do think there is a path of redress. And I think that the government, at the very least, is not wanting to go as far as maybe some of them want to go, because they understand what it means in terms of the possible end of the American Republic. We've entered a very dangerous time as a republic because we have very extreme people. We have some very extreme people who want to alter our form of government. They want to transform America into something else. They no longer want to have, the Republicans and the Democrats. They want a one-party dictatorship. They no longer want us to be a capitalist society. They want us to be a socialist society. And of course, this is one of the ways through which they could alter the type of country we live under. Crash Bandit, you're saying, did we misinterpret the globalist? Did we all misinterpret the globalists when they say they want equality or equity for all? It seems like it will be easier to lower the quality of life in the Western world. Then it raises the quality of life around the world to achieve that goal. You hit the nail on the head. In fact, this is, okay, so I've been telling you that I'm going to be doing an investigation into why they're doing this. I'm going to be heading to Panama. I'm going to be going through the migrant caravans. I'm going to be doing the groundwork for you all. This is my current conclusion on why they're doing this. I can tell you exactly what I'm thinking. This is a plot to tear down the United States. I'm just saying it plain. And it comes through an agenda being pushed by the United Nations. You hear Russia talking about it, China's talking about it, even Western Europe is talking about it, even some of our own elected officials in the United States are talking about it. The phrase, they have a keyword for it. They have a phrase they use. They talk about the multipolar world order and the unipolar world order. Remember these words, folks. What are they actually talking about? When they talk about overthrowing or changing the unipolar world order and ushering in a multipolar world order, do you know what they are actually saying? And do a Google search for these terms if you're curious. Go look for it. When the unipolar world order refers to the Pax Americana, the unipolar world order means the place of the United States as the world leader, which America is currently. The idea of the unipolar world order is that the entire world lives under a state of relatively liberal democracy, defended by and enforced by the United States through the forms of sanctions or maybe indirect or direct military involvement if certain values of human rights are violated. That America will defend the rights of citizens in every part of the world. If Russia invades Ukraine, we will back Ukraine. If Hamas attacks Israel, we will back Israel. If North Korea threatens South Korea, we will defend South Korea. If the CCP tries to attack Taiwan, we will help Taiwan arm itself to defend against the CCP. If a country carries out an act of tyranny, the United States will back the country being attacked. We will defend the rights of people in all parts of the world. That is the Pax Americana. And that has been reflected in the role of the United States in particular to fight against the waves of communist revolution and communist dictatorship. You could argue that that effort has been whittled away to an extent, right? Because there are people here who want it. And of course, there's been a lot of challenges to it through information war and cognitive warfare and stuff. Right? The global battles for the narrative. That is technically now what is being called the unipolar world order. That's how the United Nations talks about it. That's how Russia talks about it. That's how China talks about it. That's how all the world leaders talk about it. The unipolar world order. One unipolar, right? World order under the United States. Peace under America. Pax Americana. The method they're talking about to replace it is what they call the multipolar world order. Many world order. Countries governing the world with shared equity, right? Power. And the idea is this: under Duginism in Russia, they talk about controlling the Eurasian landmass. Russia would control the former Soviet Union, essentially. China would control the entire Asian region. They talk about reunification. They claim ownership over the entire Korean peninsula. They claim ownership over the South China Sea and over Taiwan. And of course, through different programs, they would even to an extent govern the surrounding Asian region. That would be China's role. Western Europe would be controlled by the European Union, Africa by the African Union, and partly through influence of China, Latin America through BRICS, and of course, the different organizations they're forming there. The United States would be America, Canada would be Canada, and America would be kept in its own little bubble, separated, and no longer able to enforce these types of things. That is the new world order, as they talk about it. That is the multipolar, the phrase, right, is the multipolar world order. And how do they achieve that? Well, remember, part of it is, of course, the methods of undermining the United States overall. Shared power, equity, right? The multi-stakeholder capitalist model. The politicians working with the international organizations to grant more power to the United Nations and other things like that, which will share the power of the United States and share the authority of the U.S. China is also working on creating the Pax Sinica and exporting what they call the China model, the Chinese model of government under the Chinese Communist Party. Totalitarian, a high-tech totalitarianism. Everything is monitored, everything is policed, every single person, and every single action, and every single connection, and every single purchase, everything you do, you say, or maybe even think, because yes, they're working on EEG, electroencephalogram technology, to monitor brain waves even for children, and monitoring eye movements and so on. Even your thoughts are governed in China. And of course, biometrics add another layer to it, and near future technologies also add another layer to that. That is the future under the China model if the CCP does not collapse. The model of the multipolar world order, the new world order as they might call it, again, the technical phrase is the multipolar world order, if you want to look it up. The idea is, of course, global equity. A global socialist state. And part of the idea of the open border program is to facilitate that. The idea is that they want to have the worst people, the poorest, the diseased, the criminals, the mentally ill, who are causing problems for the third world countries, right? They can't afford to take care of them, they're abusing the citizens, they're causing problems, they can't provide health care for them. They want those people to come to the first world countries. And so by doing that, you make, of course, the countries that are third world countries, you make life better for them. They have, less weight on the government to take care of these people. There's fewer criminals. They don't have to pay for, the health care or whatever of the mentally ill or deal with crime from the mentally ill. And they bring those people to the United States and mainly to Western Europe and Canada. And what happens? In America and Canada and Western Europe, you then have more crime, you then have more need of a welfare state, You then have the governments having to provide care for these people who in their own countries could not care for themselves, right? They're not people who can care for themselves. They take them here and have us take care of them for them, therefore creating the need of a socialist system to provide those types of services. And so a gradual transforming of our own government into more of a socialist government. Crime becomes worse, the quality of living goes down, and what happens is these countries become worse, these countries become better, and over time, as people are allowed to migrate as needed through relative open borders policies, people will go to where the quality of life is better until you've achieved a type of synthesis, a global equity. The quality of life is the same just about everywhere, and you can no longer escape it. That being said, there will of course still be your two-class system, right? There's your global leaders and your global elite, the people at the World Economic Forum feasting on lobster and steak and so on, and traveling the world, jet-setting on their yachts and so on. Well, the rest of the world is not able to enjoy those types of luxuries, right? But that's the idea. That is, in my current understanding, following all the news and analyzing it, my current understanding of what the plan is. And you can see it written between the lines when they give their statements, that this is what I believe they're doing. So I'm going to be working on a special feature about that. I'm going to be investigating this on the ground and finding out is that the case, because I believe that's the case. And again, if you listen to some of the statements, they actually say it. This is not far out what I'm saying. It's grounded in the facts of what many of these people say in their public statements. That's what's going on, folks. Let's see here. Thomas D., you're saying, is it any coincidence the government pushed for and legalized marijuana in most of the U.S.? Who funded the push anyway? It's multiple areas. You do have a lot of Americans who wanted the legalization of marijuana. Marijuana, even though it was illegal, it was relatively high demand. That's just the reality of it. You, without a doubt, did have a lot of people within our government, both right and left to an extent, pushing for it. And it was done mainly through the narrative of medical marijuana. Well, you won't let them do it recreationally, but will you let them take it medically? It's good for my back, it's good for my leg pain, it's good for my anxiety. Let them smoke it, right? And that was the narrative. After they get medical marijuana, then they push for recreational marijuana. Then they push for decriminalizing it. Then they push for broader decriminalization. And the narrative was, if we do it, there'll be less crime, because just like the era where alcohol was illegal in the United States, you had the mafia selling it. We legalize it, it becomes legal. That business goes away and it becomes legal business. Didn't happen. Because of the regulations on marijuana, it's actually cheaper to do it illegally. It's cheaper because of the permits and stuff like that. It's cheaper to do it illegally, and then if you get caught, just taking the fine on the chin. Or just doing it totally underground, and so you avoid the fines and you avoid the very expensive permit process. And so that's kind of why a lot of the cartels and triads, right, the Chinese mafia, have moved their operations here. I should note, the drug war was a Chinese Communist Party operation started under Mao Zedong. There's a book you can read on this called Red Cocaine by Joseph Douglas. And it details how Mao Zedong modeled the drug war against the United States after the Opium War, which is of course waged by Great Britain against China. And the idea is that you get the country addicted to a product, then you use that product to finance wars or whatever else, right? The Chinese Communist Party was using they created the drug war using Cuba as the proxy, and Cuba then facilitated the operations with the cartels and so on, right? The Cuban communist regime. They've of course expanded since then, but now you do have a global program, including with terrorist networks being operated in part by China through Iran proxy, operating the global drug trade. And it of course creates an above and below economy. You have a legitimate economy and an illegitimate economy. And also through the use of the criminal networks, corrupt politicians, corrupt police, corrupt businesses, people willing to violate the laws, people willing to murder, people willing to carry out crimes for the sake of money. And of course, the networks of corruption they create, political corruption and so on. All of that can be utilized, including the smuggling channels and the trafficking channels by foreign governments as ways to bring in weapons or maybe nuclear technology or whatever else, anything they want, because smuggling channels are opened and controlled by foreign governments. That's how the drug trade works. And of course, as a form of bribery, they then get networks of corrupt officials willing to betray or harm their own countries for the sake of money. And that's how it works. Book on this, Red Cocaine by Joseph Douglas. It's unfortunately out of print, but I believe you can find PDFs online. Or you can buy the very rare and very expensive copies of it. I actually have a copy of it, which I bought because I'm working on some investigations on this. All right, folks, that said, thank you all so much for being here. It's heavy topics today, I know. But I think the people need to know. I think people need to know this stuff. And I know it's a lot sometimes, but frankly, in my personal opinion, public awareness is the greatest remedy to the problems we face. Public awareness is the solution, in my opinion. Because, of course, you have to ask yourself, why do they have censorship? Why do communist regimes make media censorship and social media censorship and even censorship of speech such a priority? It's because they know the power of individuals once they become aware of the truth. And I believe that information is one of the most powerful forces in the world. I know I'm talking about pretty heavy topics, but again, in my opinion, public awareness is one of the greatest remedies to the problems we face. There's no greater cure than sunlight. And folks, we'll shine brightly on all this. Thank you so much for being here. Please share this episode. As always, folks, please take care of yourselves, stay informed, and stay free. Thank you. What use is a wall if the migrant crisis is being facilitated by the United Nations working with NGOs?
Many of the people that can't get visas to come, start off in Mexico, they start in South America.
Is this a coordinated effort? And if so, what's the motive?
Families coming across claiming asylum because they had children, but there was the same children every week. They started testing DNA to make sure that the children were in fact children of the parents. 30% weren't.
What's really happening at the U.S.-Mexico border?
These are all human smuggling cases from the past couple of weeks.
What caused the U.S. policy shift from mass immigration?